Hi, yesterday in conversation with Elham, she asked me a little bit about the definition of trauma or what trauma is. And our conversation meandered a little, and I wondered what it would be like to kind of come back and just speak a little bit to that. So, the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual, states that trauma is where there's been a threat to life. Um, and that I think can be interpreted in different ways. So there might be a subjectivity to that, I guess, in a way. Um, but that's the definition, is where there's been a threat to life. And again, I guess part of what came up in our conversation was that Elham mentioned about epigenetics and how we can experience generational trauma, whereby maybe it's something passed down to us, so we don't actually have a memory of it. And I think one of the things that we have to be cautious of with regards to kind of having the label of trauma can be where people don't remember a traumatic experience and then start to try and find one. And then sometimes that can cause false memories, which can be very not useful. Which is kind of why I started to talk about symptoms or experiences and then what to do about those things. So sometimes that can be more useful. One of the things to note is that when somebody's experienced a traumatic experience, so a threat to life, not everybody gets PTSD. So not everybody gets post-traumatic stress disorder. In fact, only about 20% of the people who've experienced trauma get that. And one really, really great way to kind of negate PTSD or negate negative aspects of the trauma afterwards is by having as much really good contact and support straight after. So being supported, having a good relationship, having a supportive environment to be in, a supportive and safe environment with supportive and safe people. So I thought I might share a little bit about trauma symptoms. And actually, it's not just necessarily trauma symptoms, it's also something that we all experience with regards to our autonomic nervous system and when we start to feel overwhelmed. So I'm going to share with you, if I can find it. Here we are. Okay, so you should be able to see this window of affect tolerance and integration. I quite like the word capacity instead of tolerance. That's my own sort of linguistic preference. You can see from this diagram here that Babette Rothschild created that we start off here at the bottom with lethargic hypoarousal. So something like kind of apathy or depression, that can be. And then here is the arousal optimal for affect tolerance and integration. So that kind of means the place where we feel safe and or safe enough and stable, calm. We're able to think, we're able to kind of make decisions, we're able to communicate with other people, we're able to be in relationship with other people, we're able to think about what we'd like to say and be able to say it. And then what can happen is that if we get overwhelmed, we might feel a lot of arousal. And so to start with, that goes to the flight and fight response. And this is what happens when our nervous system or our body feels a threat to life. So something we feel like we're in danger. So there's some kind of danger that's sort of detected, and we go into fight. We can go into fight or flight. And then if that continues, so if we continue to still feel like we're in danger, we continue, there's no calming down, there's no feeling like we're safe again, then we might go into hyper freeze, hyper arousal, where we kind of get an extreme overload, really. And we really want to sort of be able to escape. And then if that continues, even more and we still don't find a sense of safety, we can go into hypofreeze, which is excessive overwhelm, which is quite very, very unusual. So it's unusual for us to see this. Usually we go into the fight and flight, and then we can go into the freeze response. One of the things that parts of the reasons that I think that this diagram in particular is important, and that Babette did it, is that there is a difference between lethargy and freeze response. But sometimes in some ways they can kind of look the same. You know, both of those sometimes can be kind of like removed from the world, can kind of look like dissociation, can kind of feel like withdrawn. And yet it's really important to notice that there is a difference there. For example, I'm just going to share something else with you. Hi. The other thing that I kind of wanted to share with you was the autonomic nervous system table that Babette Rothschild has created. And this shows us the different usual bodily responses to these different states. So I'm just going to share the screen with you again. So here you should be able to see the autonomic nervous system chart. And again, it's the same as the one that I just showed you really laid out, but underneath where that kind of window of capacity was this time, we can see here the different possible or usual responses that happen. And just to take so if we go to fight and flight, we can see that muscles are tense, that breath is quite quick, that heart rate is also quick, and our blood pressure is elevated, that skin starts to become sweaty, that emotions, we might start to feel some rage or some fear. And that can be what kind of happens in the fight or flight, because our system detects some kind of threat to life. Now, that might be real threat to life, so there might be something real, or it might be that our nervous system has recognized something that in the past has been a sign of a threat to life. So, for example, if somebody has experienced a trauma that involves a Christmas decoration, if they see a Christmas decoration, maybe a part of their brain recognizes that Christmas decoration and feeds it back to sort of reflect on past experience, and gets ready as if there might be a threat to life, because in the past a Christmas decoration was there during a real threat to life. And so sometimes we can have this response when we're not actually at this current moment in danger. So that's worth mentioning. I'll come on to that a little bit more in a minute. So the freeze response here, we've got rigid muscles, so like a deer in headlights. Again, very fast heartbeat, significantly high blood pressure, cold sweat, dry mouth. And you can see here where it says contact with self and others, where it was in fight and flight, it says limited. Whereas when we go into freeze, really unlikely, or it feels unlikely. And if we compare this freeze one with the lethargic one, we can see where contact with self and others, it says withdrawn here, and not likely. So this is why if you're kind of looking at somebody like that, it can at first seem quite similar. However, you might see here where it says lethargic, muscles are slack, respiration is shallow. So there are some differences. The emotions are likely grief, sadness, shame, or disgust in this one, whereas terror is mostly apparent in the freeze response. And part of the reason why that's really like important is, you can see at the bottom it says recommended intervention, which is kind of based for therapists really, but it's useful to notice, is that for apathy we might want to increase some energy. So it might be that we see a friend that just seems to be collapsed, or like couch, like on the couch, and it's that kind of knowing whether do they need a little bit of encouragement, or actually if they're in freeze, do they need more calming down? And there's a really, really big difference there, isn't there, between kind of needing more energy and needing much less energy so that they can come back down to this calm state. One of the things that I kind of also want to point out is that in this normal life section, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely calm, in here, it says emotions in this bit here, the moderate: anger, shame, disgust, anxiety, excitement, sexual climax. All of those are available to us, but they're in a way that feels manageable, that we feel that are within our capacity. We're able to cope with those. So we can feel like out of breath, we're running, or we're doing something where we're exerting ourselves, but we don't feel that panic that might come with the fight or flight. So they're different. Okay, so I did say that I would say a little bit more about what happens when we kind of feel overwhelmed. And Dan Siegel created this really useful model of the brain that he used actually to teach children. But I just think it's so good. So I use it all the time. And he uses the hand to do it. So, because we can't really look inside the brain, instead, it's quite handy to pretend that our hand is a brain. And how he does it is he imagines that this is our brain stem here. And that this is the limbic area. So the brainstem is the part that has all of our basic survival things. So like breathing, makes our heart beat, all of those things that we do unconsciously, that we have no awareness of, that's going on all the time in our bodies. That happens there. And the limbic system, which is kind of the emotional part of our brain. And then we have here the cortex, which is the thinking part of our brain. So if we were like this, it would be like that here. The prefrontal cortex is here. And that part of our brain does all the kind of thinking and decision making, and like, what should I say? Oh, I feel really angry. How am I going to phrase this? How am I going to get my needs met here? What would be a kind way to say this? All of that kind of stuff happens here. And then if we're imagining that this part is the limbic area of our brain, the emotional part of our brain, we might imagine that this bit is the amygdala, and the amygdala's job is to take information from our senses, so from our sight, from our hearing, from our taste, smell, touch, so from the external environment. So we take it from our body, from our senses, and it gives the information to the amygdala, and the amygdala refers back to past experience. So it takes that information and it says, oh, okay, when I smelled lavender before, that was it reminds me of a time walking in France with my best friend. And it sends a bodily response, sends the response to the body might soften and feel more relaxed and calm. So that can happen. It can also relay information back, and it can be a negative experience. So it could, for example, like the example I gave before, it could see something like the Christmas decoration and really quick send information to the body: we're in danger, we need to do something, and fight flight comes into action. And how that happens is we go around taking in information. The amygdala maybe senses danger and it flips, sends information straight away. So there's no thinking about it. There's no, oh, is this the right thing to do? no, the prefrontal cortex, the cortex, the thinking part of our brain, goes offline. So that's not involved in that decision making. It goes instantly, almost instantly, much, much quicker than we could think about it. So it's really important that that happens in order to keep us safe. When it's a slower response, when I'm kind of looking at this book of poetry here, my amygdala is not sensing any real danger there. I do get a little sense of warmth in my body because it's a poetry book that I really enjoy. And I think maybe my amygdala is remembering that that's brought me joy before. But I'm able to stay within that green part of the autonomic nervous system. And I'm able to kind of think, is there a poem that I'd like to read right now? Maybe not because I'm doing this. So I stay within my capacity. One of the things that we can start to look out for that can be really useful and help us to feel more in control is what happens when this starts to go like this. Because usually that's what happens. The amygdala takes in information and it's sort of like, oh, something doesn't seem quite right. And we start to begin to flip our lid. And what that might feel like to some people might be kind of feeling hot, kind of feeling our heartbeat a little bit more, but we've not entirely flipped our lid yet. But something's going on. And for different people, it might be different, but often that kind of feeling of agitation or heat can happen. And it's at that point where we're able to calm ourselves down, to notice, first of all, to notice. First step is to, oh, I'm noticing that I'm feeling agitated, I'm feeling hot. Okay, so now I must be feeling worried about something. Can I see what that thing is? Ah, yeah, there was a Christmas decoration there. And because I've been keeping a bit of a track of what things trigger me, I Christmas decoration seems to be quite a regular thing. So now I know what it is. I can assess. I'm not actually in danger, even though it feels like I could be. I'm smelling, there's no smoke or anything like that. I'm listening, I'm looking around, I'm noticing what I'm feeling. Actually, I'm safe right now. Okay, what helps me to feel calm when I feel this overwhelmed? I'm going to go for a brisk walk. So we get to keep our lid on. Another thing that can be really useful when we start to feel like this is a calm and present other. So we can help, other people can help us to feel regulated. It's called co-regulation. And when we feel overwhelmed, we can go to a calm other and say, I'm feeling a little bit worried, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. And the other person can say, it's okay. Let's look together. Let's listen together. It seems safe. And this calm and present other can help the other keep their lid on. Similarly, when we have this and we start to look around and we start to notice everything, it might be that we pick up and we see, oh, actually, I was just about to walk into a pothole then. I'm going to stop. The danger was real. So I'm going to pay attention to this and I'm going to walk the other way. So it's really important that kind of checking in. Am I safe or am I in danger? What is my body telling me? What is my system telling me that isn't quite right at the moment? And that helps us to feel in control and aware, puts us back into the driving seat, really, of what's happening. So that is a brief description. And I think one of the things that can be really, really useful is being aware of what helps for you. And usually one of the biggest help when it comes to trauma is remembering that you survived, that you're here watching this video, that you're here, you survived. And remembering that even though you might remember something awful from the past, that it might feel really big in your body, that you might be remembering something awful that you are remembering, not experiencing, that it's a memory, which means that it's in the past, which means that it's not happening now, which means that you survived. So having that is really important. which is also why that kind of checking, am I safe now or am I in danger, is also really important. Because if you are in danger, you need to make sure that you look after yourself. So one of the most important kind of tools in order to get to feeling more in control of your body and in control of your responses and reactions is to notice what triggers you do have. So what is it that pushes those emotional buttons? I mentioned a Christmas tree decoration. It could be anything. It could be tone of voice. It could be a particular word. It could be anything. So it's really useful to kind of notice. And it can be really useful to note down times of days when you get triggered most. So, for example, it might be that you notice that at 10 o'clock every morning, you feel jittery and overwhelmed, and you go into that kind of fight or flight mode. And when you kind of look at what you're doing at 10 o'clock in the morning, it might be that you're getting the bus. And so then it might be that the way that you get more in control is okay, so the bus I'm finding worrying. So it might be, well, shall I experiment with where I sit on the bus and see whether that helps? Should I experiment with sitting next to a friend on the bus and seeing whether that helps? Should I experiment with traveling in a different way if that's possible and seeing if that helps? And just working out what helps for you, what's the right thing for you, and when it helps. Um, so I also think that keeping a kind of an awareness and a noticing of what this feels like for you. So whether it feels a little bit hot under the collar, whether it starts to be your heart beating, whether it's an image of a shooting star in your imagination. You know, people have all different kind of ways that we notice things. So kind of working out what's the way that you notice, what happens for you when you start to get close to flipping your lid. I hope that's been useful. And yeah, remember, I think one takeaway from this is to allow yourself to give yourself what you need in order to feel calm. So whatever that is, if it might be, sitting in the right place on the bus, allowing yourself to be curious about that and to not feel like, oh, I've just got to deal with the suffering. Instead it's like, oh, if sitting at the back seat of the bus helps, great. Do it. And the other thing is that you survived. Yeah, that you survived. Okay, thank you.